No, I don't have the space heater on right now. I turned it off. I turned it off for you. I turned it off for you. Thank you all for being here. Yeah, it's 94 here. 94, 95. So it's really bad. Thank you for the gifts, Lord Drop. Yeah, we're definitely part of the heat dome here as well. Um, love the blue hearts. Thank you, Carla. Carla with the C. I'm Carla with the K. I saw somebody else say that as well. Nina says vote for freedom and democracy. Yeah, yeah, I'm getting a lot of comments on some of those. Thank you, Ken Mom. On those videos I'm doing, educating people on Christian nationalism, Project 2025, and the basically the Christian lineage of that. Hi, Jenny. Thank you for being here. And people are saying, how can you vote for Biden? Because yeah, I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm 100% fan of Biden, but he's not an authoritarian. So I honestly believe that if we don't vote in this election, this might be the last time that we'll be able to vote. This is a very real threat. So we got what 4 or 5 months to the election, and less than 5 months. Hi, David. And we need to start talking about this. We need to make sure that you are informed and educated so you can have those talking points as well. If you're not following accounts like I Am Politics Girl, Red, Wine, and Blue, Defense of Democracy, those are all right, PETA, Heather. Absolutely. That's why we're voting for Biden. Those are some accounts where you can get some education. But yesterday on my live inside my Rev Karla inner circle, I talked about creating like some documents and some infographics. Is that something that you could help? Christopher, bless your heart. You feel like you just have to just be here for a minute. Did you need some attention? You got it, sweetie. You feel better? So thank you for the follows, Sally. Somebody asked me a question. How do we explain to people that religion being taught in schools is different from teaching LGBTQIA+? That's a really good question. That is a really good question. So let's talk about that, because when we are, let me go back and read it again because I'm getting distracted by some of the trolls that always end up in the beginning part. But we have amazing mods, so remember that. We try to keep this a safe and sacred space. Thanks for putting the question over here. So how do we explain to people that religion being taught in school is different from teaching LGBTQIA+? Hey, Queen of My Castle. Hey, Stephanie. Hey, sweetie. How are you? I was just thinking about you right before I went live. Let's see. Because I'm just going to read it verbatim. People will say that the idea of separation into church and state, those exact languages, where are you going? I didn't know you were going somewhere. But that exact language isn't in our Constitution, but the wall of separation was very significant. What's the exact? The Establishment Clause in the Constitution prohibits government from establishing a religion. So when you put that language inside public education, you're prioritizing a specific belief that negates and minimizes the value of others. So you're saying that the moral or the spiritual significance of that one religion is more important than any other. And that is the filter through which then the education experience and the narrative that these kids are getting. And that's the reason you have that the Establishment Clause, the founders and the writers of the Constitution very much wanted, the intent of that was for a separation of church and state. The whole narrative that we are a Christian nation is absolutely ridiculous. So the rulings up until now from SCOTUS that has protected and reinforced that separation of church and state has ensured that we have religious freedom in this country. Now, it depends on who you ask what the definition of religious freedom is. If you ask Mike Pence what religious freedom is in that, and we're talking about a certain sect of Christianity, which is who Mike Pence is, and those are also the thought leaders behind Project 2025. You're going to have people who believe that religious freedom means that the Christian, their type of Christianity, is free to enforce and impose their beliefs on the rest of the country because we are a Christian nation. That is their definition of religious freedom. There's video out there of Mike Pence literally saying that. That is not religious freedom. And anybody who believes that is a religious oppressionist. I'm making that up, but let's just own it. A religious oppressionist. That's what they are. They're religious oppressionists because they are comfortable with using their religious beliefs to oppress the rights of others. But what religious freedom actually is the right for you to be able to exist in as a citizen, to be able to be free from another person's religious beliefs and free to express your spirituality and your beliefs as comfortably, as safely as any other religion. So when you prioritize one in the educational system, that is a form of religious oppression. It doesn't matter what you think about the morality code, which we could go all day, around all day about the 10 Commandments. Let's talk about the religious appropriation, first of all, because the 10 Commandments are found in the Old Testament, which this same line of Christian is the first to say that we're under the new covenant because of Jesus's death, burial, and resurrection, right? So we're under the new covenant, yet we're going to reach back into New Testament writings and make this the moral code through which we're going to plant inside the school systems. The other part of this that you need, and this is where the part about LGBTQIA plus comes in, is the reason they're doing this. The reason you have these spattering of laws being testing the waters. So these extremist Christians that are part of the Project 2025 initiative. This is part of the game plan. The reason they're doing this, they're testing the waters to see if they can push these issues back to SCOTUS, where we already know we have a corrupt Supreme Court. We already have a Supreme Court that's been hijacked by religious extremists, some who are admittedly originalist and some who have been bought by politicians. And they flat out lied to us to get on the Supreme Court when they said things like Roe v. Wade was already established law. Flat out lied. It was established law. There was no reason to go back and revisit it. And no matter how you want to spin it, because what they're doing is releasing it as a national federal regulation, federal law, bringing it back to the states so then the states can freely start to annihilate human rights. And so you're getting a hint. If you look at everything that's been said and done across the United States, you're starting to get a hint at what they are trying to do. So that Louisiana law is clearly intended. They know it's going to be challenged, and they're going to fight it all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, what do you think the Supreme Court's going to do with that? They're going to annihilate the federal law to put it back into the state's responsibility to decide whether or not that type of religious narrative, that specific Christian narrative, belongs in public education. And if you're paying attention to what some of these people are saying, for instance, like Mike Braun, who just 2 years ago said that he disagreed with the Supreme Court ruling on interracial marriage, that should be decided at the state level. That is a hint. They are hoping that flies enough under the radar that those of us who would be alarmed by that language aren't paying attention, because what he's trying to do is ignite the radical extremist Christian who is the kind of person who would support Project 2025 to say, yeah, I'll vote for that. I've never liked interracial marriage, because as scary as that is, that's exactly the kind of person who's still alive and well here in America. So Mike Braun, who is now the leading gubernatorial candidate for governor in the state of Indiana, said that 2 years ago. So and just a couple of days ago, Utah, I believe in a special court session, I think they've already passed this law. It's called SB 57, I think, where they created a law that gives them the state constitutional right to override any federal regulation that they don't like. Once again, that will be challenged, and it will go all the way to the Supreme Court. Why do you think they're doing that? So that it can be dismantled at the federal level, and the states can then do what they want. So your highly red states are going to become, that they're going to be the first to just annihilate human rights. And you see that in Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Alabama, but you also see it in places like Indiana. You know, I say it all the time, Indiana is a hold my beer state. Our history here related to, tied to white supremacy and the men in the white sheets, there's a lot here, and that lineage is strong and alive and well. And that's why the leading governor candidate can 2 years ago say that and still have the votes. So yes, the book, Stephanie, I don't have that book. Can you pop the name in the comments, Stephanie? Or you want to come up? Are you free? You busy? Are you busy? Can you come up? Yes, user. Brown versus Board of Education. Yeah, it'll all be challenged, because if you go back and you look at the reasons, yes, I'm in Indiana. If you go back and you look at the reasons, thank you, Stephanie, A Fever in the Heartland by Timothy Egan. If you want to read about the resurgence of the men in the white sheets and how it pretty much began and thrived right here in Indiana, then read that book. It also tells you the story of the American eugenics that began here, that actually was a model for what was used by the man with the funny mustache. So there's a lot of history here that people aren't aware of, that we're seeing the culmination of that. But definitely in the 70s, when you saw the alliance of Paul Weyrich and Jerry Falwell, there is a documentary. I haven't seen the whole thing yet. It is called Bad Faith. You can find it on Amazon Prime. It's literally after a book by that name, Bad Faith. But you can also, if you want to read about it, you can go to Politico.com and look for the real, I'll give you the exact title. The Real Origins of the Religious Right. It's from 2014. The Real Origins of the Religious Right. Oh, this is interesting. I didn't realize that Randall Balmer wrote this article, and he's the one who wrote Bad Faith. So the documentary Bad Faith is based on his book. So he tells the story, and so this article is based on his research, and he starts to put all the points together. But the subtitle of this is, they'll tell you it was about schmortion, and I'll apologize for the ridiculous vernacular that we have to use here, but it is what it is. But the historical record is clear. This has always been about segregation. This has always been about segregation. This has always been about protecting. Hi, Sue Ellen. This has always been about protecting the white, heterosexual, cisgender, Christian, able-bodied man. Thank you for the follow, Lisa. My husband is Ray Boltz. He's lived through that. That name sounds familiar. Fr. Sped. That name sounds from. Why do I know that name? What is the name of the political so go to politico.com, and it's called The Real Origins of the Religious Right. We're scrambling to put together a resource guide for these articles and talking points and definition. Is that something that you would find helpful? We're also talking about having more of these educational things where we can really walk you through, because just hearing it one time, how many times are we supposed to hear something? Like 8 times before we know something. So we're going to do that. I do have some time this weekend that I think I'll try to look into that. I might even try to make some kind of infographic for us sassy learners, because I'm a visual person, and to see something like that, like in a mind map form, I got it. I can really grab it. Thank you so much for the gift, Queen of my castle. Let me see who is this. All right, I'll bring you up. Why not? Me too, mind maps. Yeah. Pigpen, we are all fine here, honey. Simply Me, hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Can you all hear Simply Me?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine, but I just want to make sure. This is the first time I'm trying to find a good audio, and I just want to make sure people can hear you. Well, how are you? Are you a deconstructing Christian, or are you a
Absolutely.
Christian? Okay. Do you have a question?
My question, or my opinion, I believe,
Okay.
is the YT Christian men, evangelicals, have been pushing that Christianity is under attack. They're going to take your Christianity away from you. You know, they're going to remove this from you. You're no longer going to be able to practice your faith. They're going to instate Sharia law. You've heard that so much. And I hear that from Republican people I know who do not have any concept of history, about the Constitution, anything that works, that it's supposed to. And I think they started pushing this, or the evangelicals, like you said, is back as far as Falwell, that they're going to take away our Christianity from us, so they could start scaring the Christians to believe this. That way they could get them on board now over the, past decades, to start believing that Christian nationalism is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is, how do I go about, when I try to explain to people, like for 20 years, I was telling them they're coming after, Roe v. Wade, and they're going to take it away. And it's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. It's going to happen. And when it did happen, people were just like, well, what do we do now? And you can't get them to vote. And you can't get them to understand that they're taking our rights away. And this is what they want. Or when you start talking to them about Christian nationalism, their response is, I'll worry about that when it happens. So this is where my frustration comes in. And this is also why I left the church. I left the church due to the intolerance and about the greed of money. So to me, I find myself, when everybody says, are you a Christian? I don't even know what I say, because I say Christianity has led to so many atrocities in the world, from the Inquisitions to the Crusades to the Salem witch trials, to what they're doing to the LGBT community. So for me, I just want to say for myself, I'm a follower of Jesus only. I go by Jesus's teachings, and that he taught us to love, to be kind, to do for one another, to, treat others as you would have treated him. So I guess, again, my question is, how do we get through to these people?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I feel that they're so far gone that we can't get them back.
What is your religious heritage?
My whole family growing up was always Baptist.
Southern Baptist?
Yes, I'm from Texas.
Okay. I grew up Southern Baptist as well. And so the first thing we have to do is recognize that, that was us.
Mm-hmm.
That was us. I mean,
We
we
didn't.
were deeply indoctrinated into some of that belief system that at some point created, some kind of moral or spiritual superiority that some people just, in order for them to feel connected and to be accepted, it becomes their whole identity. Now, for those of us who deconstructed, we can take a step back and say, okay, wow, I can see how it harmed me. I can see what I used to believe and what I no longer believe. And now I need to, I mean, for a great many of us who are aware of the danger of this type of theology, we start to work to educate ourselves and to educate other people, and deconstruct and decolonize from those things. But fear-based theology it actually, and I do believe this, there's science behind it, that it rewires the brain. So you can see that it's almost like, not that I'm comparing people to animals, but we start with an analogy that people get, then we can move from there. But when you think of the the chained dog who's been their entire life abused, fears the rescuer.
Exactly.
Because all they know is what they know. They only know that existence through there. And when I've had the conversations here, I've seen the conversations in other places where I go in to hear what other creators are talking about. You come to a point where a person who's indoctrinated in that fear-based theology, they have a mirror in front of them, and it absolutely is not computing. It can't get through the wiring that says you are now being faced with a new truth that is so rattling their existence, their identity, their entire life has been rooted in this reality, and it's how they see themselves, and it's how they describe themselves and define themselves, and it's how they find community, it's how they're affirmed. And you then are showing them something differently. It can create a very vitriolic reaction. And I'm sure, if you've been on lives where all of a sudden people are hurling horrible things at you and saying horrible things about you, and it comes out very angry because they're afraid. They're afraid of what you're telling, that the fear feels more comfortable than the reality that they've been sold a lie, that they've been sold an indoctrination that only serves to strengthen a religious patriarchal structure. And there's no computing that. It takes somebody who, for the interest of themselves, for those of us who finally came to a point where we were accepting that we were deconstructing, and we had the strength and the discernment to be able to step back and say, all right, something's off. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to trust this inner knowing, and I'm going to get away from this because this isn't working for me anymore. We can hope that something like that's happening, or a lot of times what happens is the crisis becomes when it comes home. Someone or they themselves have been so hurt when they realize that no one is safe under that structure except the white Christian man. So you see that a lot where you have these non-denominational churches that have this perception of being modern, and you put the pastor in jeans, you put a rock band up there, you might even have a couple of smoke machines, you black out the sanctuary, so you always feel like you're going to a rock concert.
Exactly.
And so you get this is branding, this is marketing 101, which they are masters. But behind those curtains is the same toxic theology, is the same dominionism, is the same manifest destiny, is the same support. They can even tell you, they can put rainbow flags all over the outside of their church, but they will gatekeep how the LGBTQIA plus community will be able to show up in that church by, they won't accept them into members, they won't baptize them, they won't officiate a same-sex wedding, they won't ordain them, they won't allow them into leadership. And they may even go so far. I had one person one time boasting that their church has a support group for all the people in the church who was gay, but he could not tell me if anybody in leadership was actually not just a member of the LGBTQI plus community, because I think there was some, if you are abstinent, if you are rejecting your authenticity, then you're able to be obedient to the word because you're not sinning, you're not acting on that sin, then you can come in to leadership. That's not what I'm talking about. He couldn't answer those questions. And he started to, like, you could see the computation. He could not get his arms around what I was saying. And so he just said, I just need to go. And he was gone. And it's the same kind of thing. So, but what will happen is that person who is just wonderfully so happy, and then they think they're going to show up at Pastor Bob's is going to ordain my gay niece. She's a wonderful person and she's met a wonderful partner, and I just know he's going to want to baptize you, to find out that he is not going to touch that.
No.
He will not even come close to that. And then all of a sudden you have a day of reckoning that your faith family isn't at all what you think it is. So that's why deconstructing is a very personal thing. And it's happening on an individual level where people are just quietly walking out the door. Social media finally gave us a platform where we could start to create community and talk about it. So to that, I'm not saying not to talk to people who are churched, or people who are not deconstructing, because here's the thing, and especially for the people who say, well, I'm glad my church isn't like this. Okay, show me how your church is educating people against the dangers of Project 2025. And don't tell me that they can't get political. What they can't do is they can talk about social justice all day long. All you have to do is model it after Reverend William Barber, who talks about policies that are harming people. Project 2025 is set up to harm every marginalized group that has ever fought for rights in this country. It is going to spiral us back to the 20s. This is a new era of Jim Crow.
Exactly.
That they are trying to do. So if your church is not educated, and I saw somebody a while ago say, thank God I'm Lutheran. Well, then every church, if they are not part of this evangelical fundamentalist mindset, this extremist Christian who is actually actively working to promote Project 2025, then they should be talking against it. There is no middle ground, because what's at stake for us is the future of our country. I heard someone say the other day that this might be the only place, this might be our only opportunity to ever vote again.
Exactly.
And so, continue to educate yourself, continue to have those talking points, continue to talk to people, but you are going to get shut down. But one of the
Yes.
ways the first thing I say is, if they say, well, we don't talk about those things in our church, then you are being complacent to an ideology that's going to annihilate their rights. And they are coming for everyone. They want to control IVF. They want to decide who's going to be eligible for contraception. So they think you can say, well, I am pro-life, so I'm really glad Roe was annihilated. Yeah, well, how are you going to feel when it's your daughter and she's already got 3 kids and she can't afford a fourth, but she can't get contraception?
This is the same thing I've had with people I knew, that a family member.
Hold on, simply me. Child of God, let me tell you where you need to go to: the First Baptist Calvary Trinity down the left. I think they are having a Bible study, and you just got turned around, sweetie. Or they might be at Cracker Barrel. So you might want to go there, but make sure you tip, because everybody is embarrassed with a group of Christians show up and then they don't tip. It's really embarrassing.
And a rude to one after church.
I've gone to conferences where the first thing that they've said is that they have cities where people don't want to host Christians because they won't tip. The restaurant industry doesn't want them there. So, child of God, you just go on your way, sweetie. And
I was a waiter in college and it happened to me.
Yep, find your people.
What I was mentioning just a minute ago was in college. Well, first let me start off with, I have a family member. They're younger than me. I'm 52. And he's a young pastor. I'm thinking they're in their 30s. They're a second cousin. And he and his wife started dating probably when they were, 14, 15. And she got pregnant. And his dad and family was real big into the church. But they decided her being pregnant at 14 or 15 was not a good idea, so we're going to have an abortion. So they had it because it was right for them at the time. Now he gets up and preaches about abortion being wrong.
Make sure you say shmortion, just in case.
Shmortion. Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
I'm sorry we have to do that.
I had 2 college roommates who got pregnant, and they had a shmortion because it was right for them at the time, but now they vote Republican. And for me, when I talked to them, and I'm like, why was it okay for you? Because it was right for you at the time because you were in college and you couldn't be a mother and you had your shmortion. But you have now taken that right away from other women. And then I've asked him, I'm like, one of my friends, I'm like, you have 2 daughters. What if one of them was raped? I understand if you're against abortion or shmortion, then
and make sure you say grape with a G.
Grape. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
That
we're doing our best here.
Exactly. That if one of your daughters was raped and became pregnant, what would you do? And so she thought about it for a minute. And she said, that's a good question. I never really thought about it happening to my daughters. I said, but you have voted for this. You've known about this.
Thank you, moral atheist. Thank you. If you all could hit F1, that just resets the comments and shows that this is, and some of you could say, for educational purposes only. And you're all here. Thank you very much for doing that. I appreciate that. So simply me, one of the things that we have said in the past also is those who can afford it and those who have access to it will continue.
And that's what she said.
Have the services.
She said, thankfully, when I asked her about if that happened to her daughter, and she never thought about it really, or her daughters, what would she do? And so she thought for a minute, and she said, well, thankfully, we have access that we could take her somewhere. And for me, I'm just like, but you've taken that right away from other women who couldn't have access. And so for me, it also comes down to the hypocrisy that it's
Mm-hmm.
okay for me, but not for you. And that's another reason why I said I left the church, because I didn't really grow up in the church. My dad's side was always very free thinkers. They
Mm-hmm.
encouraged us to really think outside the box, to question things. Now, my mom's side was the very Southern Baptist, but my mom also got away from the church after she married my dad. But we were always, when we would go visit on my mom's side, it was always, they wanted us when we were there, for vacation Bible school, for going to with them on church, Wednesday nights and Sundays. And I hated it back then, because I even remember as a child, this isn't right. It was hell, fire, and brimstone,
Mm-hmm.
And then I even remember as a child thinking back then, in my mind, there's got to be 1 million animals on this planet. How did God fit then 2 million animals into an ark? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So these were
I
things I would think of back then. And of course, now, like I said, I'm 52, and I, have read my Bible several times. And like I said, I believe what I believe, but I don't believe in everything the Bible says. I believe it's
so
been translated so many different times, and it was also written by men in order to have control and to put fear into people that you will now obey and be moral.
Yeah, so you really did it was almost like a journey. You took us on your deconstructing journey, because so for so many of us, we start to deconstruct the hypocrisy, which is what you were explaining with how people say, well, I have the freedom to exercise my beliefs, and then I'm going to ask for forgiveness, but I don't even want you to have that right. I don't want you to have that freedom. So, as I'm going to use my religious beliefs to be a religious oppressionist, and I'm going to make sure I vote for people that will enact laws because I believe in my moral and spiritual superiority. And I'm going to say that my way is the only way. And I'm going to make sure that y'all out there are going to live a life according to the way I think you should live it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but for me, I'll just go and I'll do my, if it's Hail Marys or if it's asking for forgiveness or whatever it is, I'm high enough on that religious patriarchy, and I know how it works. I know how this sins thing works. So I'll do what I need to do, and then I'll ask for forgiveness, because I am not going to be uncomfortable with my life
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do that. So that hypocrisy, if you go to Pew Research Center and you just start searching for why people leave church,
Mm-hmm.
because if you see if you see reports out that Christians have written, it's because we're lazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's because we've been tempted. It's because we forgot
Mm-hmm.
God.
Mm-hmm.
It's because we want to watch football on Sunday.
Exactly.
Those don't even make the top 10 of
Mm-hmm.
why people leave
No.
church. But you will see that one of the number one reasons that people give oftentimes is they can no longer reconcile the hypocrisy that they're finding.
Mm-hmm.
There's hypocrisy or the inconsistencies in the teachings that seem to apply to some and not to others. I literally know someone who, when she found out as a teen, unmarried teen, that she was pregnant, the church brought her and her boyfriend up to the front and made examples of them and shamed them, and then said that the only way they could stay in membership is if they got married. But when the pastor's daughter ended up in the exact same situation, that's not what happened.
No.
They even had a baby shower
Mm-hmm.
for the pastor's daughter, who remained unmarried. And this person shared that story with me and hadn't put together how much that had harmed her,
Mm-hmm.
because patriarchy teaches us that we don't have right to our pain, that was something, I did something so bad that I deserved what they threw at me. And because of her proximity to power, I don't have the right to compare my situation to hers, until we started talking and I started talking about the things that I teach. And she was like, I haven't thought about this in years, but that really hurt. And the tears just flowed. And she said it in passing. I said, let's park here for a minute and let's pause here because this is a lot of pain that you've been carrying. And I've watched this person evolve over the years into this person who's reclaiming her spirituality and her empowerment to say, I didn't realize how much patriarchy was harming me. Now, the other part that I think is really interesting is that you're looking at this deconstructing, which is also, it points you to the places where privilege lives in this kind of mindset. There is this whole thing about the exclusive Christian club is a real thing. And I didn't know it. I was still in the church when I first found out how people thought about Christians. I had no idea that when we talked about being the chosen one, and that when we talked about being in this world but not of it, that reflected in an arrogance that I hadn't seen until one time at coffee. One time I invited a friend to church and she said, I love you, but don't ever invite me to your exclusive Christian club. And we'll be fine. We'll be friends. And it was a boundary she was setting with me. And I realized I had never invited her. And I was shocked. I really had to. It was one of those places that when you finally do deconstruct, you go back and you go, that was a defining moment when I saw myself through someone else. Then, but not only are you unpacking the way these beliefs have been weaponized, you're also unpacking what is it that you believe. So you're thinking, who am I if I'm not what the church says I am? And what do I believe if I no longer believe what the church teaches? And I try to be careful about that. Like there are certain things, like when I talk about, I don't believe, if you read the Bible and you believe that being gay is a sin, that's your belief. But I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise, except when you take that belief and then you try to oppress others.
Exactly.
That is not religious freedom. We are a country that's built on democracy and the separation of church and state. It's foundational to our Constitution. And you're now using your homophobic beliefs to oppress someone. So I'm going to call that out. I'll also call out rapture theology because of its links to a lot of these beliefs. Because rapture theology is only about 300 years old. But when you start thinking about how often your beliefs have been tied to a specific translation of the Bible, even though there's thousands of translations, to one specific translation of the Bible that was supposed to be the inerrant, infallible, complete work of God, and then based on that translation, someone then interpreted it. And you've been sitting in the congregation, and a pastor up in the pulpit has been spoon feeding you what those interpretations are. And it's very common that many people that have been part of that indoctrination never read the Bible.
Exactly. I can remember in the church, and even my grandparents on my mother's side, always saying, hate the sin, but love the sinner. Jesus would say. And I remember thinking, okay, because I was little. So I never questioned it. I thought that's what the Bible said. And, of course, the more I, grow up and realize this is not true. And so I read, and it's nowhere in the Bible does it say that.
This is a hilarious comment.
And it never said that. They would say, Jesus would tell you.
Simply me. Hold on. Monique says, at the end of the day, you have an answer for everything, but you will see the truth. Honey, where do you think I learned about have an answer for everything? I mean, the hypocrisy of that kind of
and the hate and the hate, and it's the hate
because when you can either continue to gulp down the indoctrination, or you can pull yourself out of it and realize what the structure upon which it was built, and then say, well, what does my spirituality look like now? And the cool thing is that I don't give a flip what some Monique who thinks that I'm going to answer to her version of a God cares about me anymore. When you start to deconstruct from that and realize that is a fear-based tactic, manipulative tactic,
that they've been taught
that is actually meant to trigger some kind of emotion in me to bring me back into submission. And when you've deconstructed from that and healed from it, then you can see how absolutely ridiculous that is, and almost be at shock that it ever had any control over you at all. But I'll be honest, when I first started coming out of the Southern Baptist tradition and evangelicalism, I mean, I had a whole slew of people calling me, wanting to go for coffee, and that's what they'd say: you need to come under submission. You need to come back under the authority.
Mm-hmm.
You need to make sure that you apologize to your pastors for leaving church.
Yes.
And it was all about submit, obey, 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 obey.
And do not question.
Back under the alignment.
Yes. Because like we were saying, or what I was saying, that, I was always told, hate the sin, but love the sinner. And again, that's what I thought. But in my heart as a child, I knew I don't want to hate anybody, or I don't feel that way against people. And then, like I said, I realized that's not even in the Bible. Gandhi said it. Mm-hmm. It was Gandhi. And I look and I'm like, people they don't question, they don't read, they don't know history. And they just fall, like you said, into this indoctrination. Mm-hmm. And I saw my mother grow up with hurt because of the church and religion and her parents. Because my dad, what they would have said back then, grew up on the wrong side of the tracks.
Yeah.
His parents were bootleggers. What
part of the country?
Texas.
In the Appalachian?
Central Texas.
Okay.
So
I was Appalachian, and we were moonshiners.
Yeah. And my dad's parents are, they didn't go to church and things, but to me, they were better Christians than what Christians would call themselves, because my grandfather took that money and he would tell, the clothing stores and the shoe stores in the little town square, don't tell them where the money came from, but you make sure kids have shoes and clothes. And people would come to their house so they could feed them. Mm. And so my mom, when she started dating my dad, when she would go over there, she said the look on some of the men's faces when they saw my mother there, they went to the same church. Mm. They were getting their moonshine.
Oh, and for sure.
Their faces were just like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And, my mom never said anything.
Sin on
my
Saturday.
Mom's parents didn't want my mom dating my dad back then. Mm. They did their best to break him up because he was from the wrong side of the tracks. And then they
drummer,
didn't even
I'm going to get you in just a second. I saw your request. You'll be next.
So when my mom was, engaged to get married, family was telling my grandparents, just give her a quiet wedding at the house. Don't give her a church wedding, because they don't want them to know they're marrying into that. And even my mom's sister, treated her that way and still treats her with this, authoritarian, I'm better than you because, I went to church my whole life. And my mom to this day still has, when we talk, and I can see it because she'll start crying, that they did that to her. Mm-hmm. And then later, my grandparents did, later apologize and say, we're sorry. But they never really owned what they did.
Well, apologizing is not something that we're taught. And that's a whole thing about forgiveness. Is Poetic here? Poetic, are you here? I haven't seen your name come up today, but Poetic was here the other day, and I've taught a lot of times about what this whole concept. Besides shame and guilt, which, this perpetual feeling of shame and guilt and unworthiness, but anger and forgiveness are two of the biggest things, and sin are three of the biggest things that have been weaponized against us, because sin can be this moving target and it can be very subjective. But forgiveness was always about not so much about it being an apology and a change in behavior, as much as it was that the victim was at a place where you were forced to accept the forgiveness, which often meant restoring the relationship, because that type of indoctrination serves the patriarchy, which is how, when you look at the report from 2022, when the Southern Baptists finally had to admit to how many cases of abuse against children and women that they had covered up and not reported. and tried to take care of inside the church, hundreds of cases. I mean, people want to always talk about the Catholics, but let's look at what happened inside the
Hmm.
Southern Baptist tradition. The
Exactly.
Mormons have their own problem that they're dealing with. I
Exactly.
mean, this just continues to go on and on and on. But you're taught to submit to that regardless of the harm that's done.
Yes, just
So
like.
even though your parents may not be abusers to that level, there is no accountability inside this, because if as parents you're higher up and the children must obey you.
Hmm.
So there's no reason to be accountable for that. There's
Yes,
no reason to take accountability, because it is what it is. I'm the parent. What I say goes. I'm not accountable to you about my behavior. If I've
exactly.
harmed you, get over it.
Over it. Yeah, and that's
That's
what.
exactly right. Simple. You are here. Poetic, are you here? Okay. Okay. Let's see. Who just asked to come up? I'm sorry you timed out. So I can't. I'm sorry. I've got a lot of things going in my head here. Whoever asked to come up, it looks like you timed out. Simply me, there's someone else asking to come up. I have absolutely loved this conversation.
Me too.
Please, oh, Drummer, thank you, Mama She. Drummer, if you're here, go ahead and request to come back up. Poetic, if you're here, I'd love to talk to you about this whole thing about forgiveness, because you were able to give me those words, because I've been talking about it, and I'm kind of, as a minister, I had too many words, and you just gave it to me, and it was so powerful. I used that in a teaching I had Wednesday night, and people, you could just feel there were tears, and there was a lot of emotion around that. So if you're here, I'd love to talk to you about that. If not, I don't see Drummer or Poetic in there, so we're going to go ahead to Lenny is coming up. Hello, Lenny.
Hi, how are you?
I'm okay. How are you? Are you a deconstructing Christian?
I am. As a matter of fact, I've been following you for a long time. I'm a transgender American who transitioned in the 70s, and my dad was a Methodist minister.
Well, happy Pride Month.
Yes, happy
Thank
Pride
you, and
Month.
I'm
We
thank you.
celebrate and affirm you, and are
Exactly.
happy to be here with you. And I care about your pronouns.
Yep.
I can see that, and I am so appreciative of your support and of the logical and cogent and thorough way in which you are helping others deconstruct. Because my dad was actually pretty accepting and liberal guy, even though he was born in the mid 1900s. When I transitioned in the 70s and was outed in high school by a friend, I had been going to school surreptitiously as a boy for many years. And what he said to me was, well, you're not hurting anyone. And those were his words to me, which
This
meant
was your
so
father?
much at the time. And he didn't
Lenny, I'm
understand
getting
completely. He didn't get it. Transgender was
Lenny.
not.
Lenny, can you hear me? You're
You're
is
probably
anybody
getting
is he lagging for
dropouts.
anybody else? Is anybody else getting a lag on Lenny? You might have to turn off your camera. Thank you, Lynette. Okay, so Lenny, we can hear you, but you might have to turn off your camera because you were lagging a little bit. All
Yeah,
right,
I
please
just
keep
turned it
going.
off. Is that any better?
Yes, thank you.
But anyway, I just wanted to say thanks for all the work you did, that you do, and that it was really interesting growing up with a very religious father who was trying to understand transgender.
I think we lose Lenny? Is anybody hearing them, or is it
Uh,
just
but again, thank you for all you do and for your support. I'm at my lunch break at work here in New York, so
okay?
I
So we
just
did.
wanted to come on and say how much I appreciate you.
Well, we appreciate you. You did cut out there at the end, so be sure to come back when your signal's stronger, and make sure you go back and read the comments, because there was a lot of love coming your way.
All right, I will do.
Okay, take care. And then I see
Cancel. Sorry.
Hi, hey, it's me, Lorna. How are you? Okay, that was somebody who didn't want to be here. I think I saw a question, but now I need to go back to my original question because I talked about the Ten Commandments, but I did not really talk about how it's different than teaching about LGBTQIA plus in school. So, there is a push, especially in Florida, where you see things like don't say gay, and people are saying, well, third graders don't need to learn about what it means to be gay. They don't need to learn about these things. And we're talking about that there are children whose parents they have two moms, they have two dads, they have diverse backgrounds, and these kinds of laws hurt the children when they're not able to express their home life, which can be, the data proves that it can be just as stable, just as loving, just as supportive, because it takes a flipping village. And the people who are so homophobic that they want to create these laws about how people are, how they're showing up in their gender and sexual authenticity, think this is a very ignorant and dangerous viewpoint, but they're basing it on this archaic translation of the Bible about the male female gender, which was written by humans who were just trying to understand what it meant to be human at that time. And anytime you take thousands of years old scripture and you try to apply it to something thousands of years later, someone's going to be harmed. Someone's livelihood, their essence, their authenticity is going to be marginalized, because you can take sections of the Bible to justify bigotry, racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, xenophobia. You can do whatever you want, because cherry picking the Bible is the only way you can get through to a place where you can justify bigotry. And it never will be reconciled with authentic spirituality. So by the time you get into even later grade school and up into junior high, you have students who are understanding who they are. And if you've really studied this and you recognize once again the science and the data, there are people who knew when they were 5 years old that there was something about them that was different than what they were able to express openly. That there's something that they needed to identify with them. So the most important thing for them to have is have a supporting family and a supportive community to help them figure that out. This whole narrative that teachers are teaching about the LGBTQIA plus community as an indoctrination to turn people against their sexual or gender authenticity is ridiculous. So the difference is, one is a religious oppression, bringing in the Ten Commandments because that's prioritizing a religious belief. The other is we are talking about humanity and the broad diversity that is science-based, and that we know the unalive rate of teens and that are part of the LGBTQI plus community is so high because of this type of weaponization and judgmental and toxic theology that denies them the support that they need at the most critical times of their lives. So it's time for us to make sure, because again, this is part of the Project 2025. If you want to know exactly what Project 2025 believes and what they say about divorce, IVF, contraception, and the LGBTQI plus community, it's all out there. Go to theheritagefoundation.org, type in the name of an article, and you're going to see everything that they've written as part of their segue to create the foundation for Project 2025. It's all out there in the open now.
I have a question.
Sure.
When we talk about Project 2025,
Mm-hmm.
And for me, one thing that I will never understand is why it's not on the news, why it's not being put out in ads, to put it out there so people that maybe are on the fence or don't follow politics, but maybe a little bit, let me think about it, that it's not being pushed to let people know this is their game plan. This is what they're doing, because maybe somebody who does vote Republican, but they're struggling to have children right now, they don't know about Project 2025 and that they want to take away IVF, and that could change their vote, and they could think, wait a minute, I need to rethink this. This is what they want to implement. And this is another thing why I say we lose, is because we don't get it out there. And then also we don't get our voters out. And I always said, if we can get our young voters out, we would demolish. And then we could, get things turned over. We could get Roe v. Wade codified. And this is another one of my frustrations, is people that I know that just are just, like I said earlier, I'll worry about it when it happens. And you can't worry about it when it happens, because now it's done.
What was the, and Salt's Mom, I see you. If you time out, come back in. What was the act that was just passed? Defensive, that was defensive marriage in 96. And what did we just reaffirm? What did we call it? I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Somebody have it. What are you so proud of? Alejandro, what are you talking about? What are you so proud of? What are you so proud of? What does that mean? And did I miss something?
It's their hate.
You're right. I saw, why do they want to take away IVF? Elizabeth Hatcher, here's what I believe about it. What they're wanting to do is, because this is also, part of the Catholic initiative, where they just think IVF is a sin. Like they want it all to go away.
Contraception.
I think what's going to happen with IVF is that, hey, it's me, Lorna. You left. Were you going to come up? Did you have a question? And there's just a lot happening today that we're getting pushed up. Just keep commenting. Educational. F wants everything. What they are asking you what you are proud of. I don't understand that question. I mean, if you're trying to say something, just say it. I don't know what you're asking. They're here. They're taking care of them. I have really good moderators, Binks and Lucinda. They're taking care of this. They're just coming in pretty hot and heavy right now. So we'll get it taken care of.
I go back to about deconstructing from the church, is you look at the comments. We're having a civil discussion. Nobody's being disrespectful to one another. We're talking. But they come in with these hateful comments and think that they have, like you said, because they're, superiority, they're more moral than we are. And they come in and they say hurtful, rude comments, and think that they're justified because I read the Bible. Does that make sense? And then I'm like, you can't love Jesus and have hate in your heart. You can't, you type something, but then you are being everything Jesus told you not to be.
Yeah. I'm going to bring up another person here, because Duke keeps asking me what I'm proud of. I'm proud of my children. I'm proud of my family. I'm proud of my ministry that's helping people deconstruct from religious harm, that's helping them find their spirituality after leaving church.
And thank you
by helping people we are now an unchurched country. And so there are a lot of people who don't understand what they can do to find their way. Does that make that clear? Does that help, Duke? Was there anything else? Is there any other question I have for you? Hello there, Salt's Mom. How are you?
I'm good. And, is there a full moon? Because it's like, what is going on
Yes,
in the
that's
comments?
why I was up last night from 1 to 4, and I was like, okay, I forgot it's a full moon. Plus, it's the solstice.
Yeah. So the
So
crazies
this
are out
is
there,
this is
man,
a
and
the
oof,
longest day of the year. I have a
yeah.
wonderful teaching I like to do around the solstice, but it just didn't feel right today. We just have so much going on, and yeah, today
I
the
wanted to say,
moderators are working.
yeah, they're working overtime, and I wanna offer my assistance if you need another moderator. Because my
Yeah, so
God, I was like,
we are
please somebody
actually,
mute that guy, you know?
yeah, we're gonna start be looking for some moderator training. We're gonna do that with a select group of y'all that are always here and can help with that. But we will go through some of that. So be looking for that. I'll probably announce it in the inner circle.
Strawberry moon. That
So
sounds delicious.
do you have, I'm sorry, what?
I just somebody said strawberry moon, and I've never heard that term
Oh
before.
yeah, so it's a big moon.
But it
It's a big,
sounds delicious.
yeah, it does. It does. So how you look well. What's on your mind?
What's on my mind is I'm going to try and speed talk because I know I don't have much time. But I grew up Catholic, rabid Italian Catholic, so there was like lots of fear based everything. If you know, like in fact, I made that comment. Awesome education, but emotional damage. And then I was nothing for a while, but then I got into fundamentalist Christianity and their whole fear-based, theology, and that was like a comfortable old shoe. So I brought the little girl who lived in my house. She was not related to me, but um,
One second, Salt's mom. Lynette or Stacy, grab Moral Atheist as username so that that might be something we'll be able to collaborate for the mod training. Sure. Okay.
yeah,
Go
he's the
ahead.
guy. I blew up in his live the other day, but we knew that would happen. But anyway,
Good.
so I brought this little girl, and she's had, you know, she was in. I feel terrible. She's been in 8 rehabs in 8 months. So I now have the care and feeding of her child.
Hmm.
And it's really, really like bringing up a lot of stuff for me. I don't want to redo those mistakes, you know. But I think I'm just responding to like the craziness of the comments was just like, whoa, somebody shut these people up. And also just
Yeah, and there's a fine line because it's going to. There was somebody in the inner circle the other day who said that she wasn't sure that this was the place for her because she really still had a love for Jesus, and she wanted to be able to praise and pray and talk about worship songs, and I know how triggering that can be for people who are deconstructing, but I think we came to a good place with that. But I can see there's like this fine balance. You have people who come in who just want to troll. They want to be disruptors, and they want to create chaos. And somehow they think that Jesus is
I'm gonna
reaching
mute
down, patting
myself.
them on the head. Okay, they think that. Thank you, Aaron, for the reminder. Yes, please tap 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 tap. Um, they think that somehow that's giving them spiritual stars in their crown or whatever because they come into somebody's place and they just wield these judgmental hate-filled things. And guess what I do when somehow I end up on their FYP. They come on, I see them on my FYP in their lives or their products. You know what I do? I hit not interested. I hit not interested because I don't know anything about them and I'm not sticking around to see what they are. But if they're serving a purpose over there that has nothing to do with me, I am not going to bother them. But what's happening with deconstructing is because for people have been deconstructing for years. We just met Lenny who said that they transitioned in the 70s and had a supportive parent who was a minister. So none of this is new, but you did it quietly.
Yep.
But social media is giving us community. It's giving us voice. It's giving us a path to healing. It's giving us empowerment. It's giving us words. It's validating the fact that we were harmed. For many of us, we experienced some kind of spiritual manipulation that can be classified as abuse. And for some people, that led to religious trauma. And for some, this model of religion is no longer serving our highest good, and they want to blame us for that. They want to figure out how to somehow, they're not going to be accountable about that at all. So they as part of their indoctrination, they're going to come here and scream at us when all they're doing is, y'all realize that I'm going to just be thankful that I am not among you on Sunday morning. You're not making me want to be around you at all. But they're used to the same kind of indoctrination. They think the louder they come at us and the more they weaponize what they believe, that we're going to fall into submission.
Yeah, I unmuted myself.
Correct, Veronica. Correct, Veronica. It's 10 seconds, and and you just keep scrolling on.
Did I say something wrong?
No. I was talking to somebody in the chat.
No,
Veronica was right. She said something wrong.
Yeah,
right.
Please do that. That is true, Veronica. No, my neighbor decided to use his wood chipper right as I was going on with you.
Well, if it's not your wood chipper, it's the dogs.
Right, exactly.
Who are always in there with
the wood
you.
chipper spurred the dogs on. So I'm inside now, but I just wanted to finish up by saying, like, I mean, I don't remember who it was who was saying they transitioned in the 70s, but my God, what a wonderful thing to have been taught about options when I was that age. Because now at 63, my birthday is tomorrow.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, it's not a big deal.
It's Salt's mom a
not
heart.
A 5 or a 0 anymore. It doesn't matter. But anyway, so I mean,
give Salt's mom a heart in the comments, please.
I am absolutely like relearning everything that I thought I knew about identity and sexuality. And that was another thing. It was like, I don't even know what, I'm still deconstructing and working hard at it. And I don't know what to call myself. So like when someone says, will you pray for me? I say no, because I know I won't.
And that's okay.
You know, I'm not going to do it because I don't know if it works and I don't want to waste my time or yours. So it's been really a learning experience to come to terms with even just the most basic vocabulary.
That's awesome.
You know,
that's
so
awesome.
I'm doing it. And I'm having my granddaughter, quote unquote granddaughter, has, kept me away from your lives as well as other things. So I'm hoping to be here more often.
Good. You're always welcome.
I know. And I promised your mod I wouldn't come up anymore, so you could like spread the love. And
you don't have to do that.
First time back, and I'm like, oh, I need to come up.
No, I think it's important. I think people will become more courageous, and they'll come up and talk when they see that other people aren't afraid to come up, and they see how you have a question, and you think, well, how's she going to take this question? Is she going to belittle my ignorance? I'm not going to do that. You don't have to worry about any of that. I'm going to, as long as you're respectful, I will make space for you to answer your question. And so I think that you show people that. You show them the way. So thank you for being here.
Let me tell you, to anybody who's worried about losing it while you're up here, Mary Hanlon, the white phone. All right, for sure. It's great seeing you again.
Okay, bye-bye.
I have another question for you.
Sure.
Or a discussion. You know how the Southern Baptists just voted that women can't preach?
Yes.
And I had seen some videos and watching at the convention, and that women were happy about it in the church, their church, telling them that you can't preach.
All right, let's talk about.
And for me, like I said, it goes back to this, the man wanting women to be submissive and to control them. And then I think these women have daughters, and they're allowing these men to dictate that it's okay that, you come to church to be seen but not heard. And women applaud this. And it, is it just because you believe, or I believe it's because they've just been so indoctrinated from the time they were growing up that even their dads taught them this. You were to be seen, not heard.
Let's have a quick
church tells you.
Let's have a quick conversation about internalized patriarchy, especially in the religious structure. Elizabeth, I try to come here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday around noon Eastern. I think I'm going to push that to 1 Eastern. This is my first time being here this week just because I had some family stuff I had to take care of. I will be adding some evening ones because I want to have an opportunity to create more space for education. So those are going to look like more like I'm coming in and I'm going to talk about a specific topic, and we're just going to like more like my videos, so we can go from one to there through the end. Holly, I'm going to get right to you. If you two wouldn't mind muting for a second, I just want to
Absolutely.
talk about what simply me said, and then Holly, I'll come to you. Okay.
Okay. Thank you again for answering.
No problem. So the religious patriarchy, this internalized patriarchy, when you said that women were happy, if you think about the number of times that women are a part of weaponizing this patriarchal structure. So let's just keep it to the church for right now. So if you picture a pyramid, or I always like to picture a buoy, and that at the very top of that is the white Christian man. So that's your pastor and your church leaders. And then depending on their loyalty and their proximity to the power, there are people that are all up and down that structure. And so those are people who are obedient and get rewarded for that obedience. That's how they'll be on that structure. So women who have made it to the top are very happy to be, they know they'll never get to the top, but they are happy that they are close enough to the top that they can wield some kind of power, or they're comfortable in the privilege that's afforded to them by having that proximity to power. So they're content with their lives. So it's easier for them to just carry up water to get to the place where they have created their position of power and pour it down on the rest of the people who are capable and probably more qualified, who would love to be at the top of that pinnacle, who deserve to be, but inside that religious patriarchal structure, they are never going to be that. And the women in that structure are working in cooperation with it. So you can take, that's just inside church. If you look, you can see that inside society, you can see that inside family, you can see that where you may have a very abusive, incompetent father at the top of a familial patriarchal structure that the mother defends, rationalizes, protects at the expense of her children, because she's protecting her proximity to power without realizing that that's exactly what she's doing. But she's internalized her patriarchy to the point where she thinks she deserves what is happening to her and her children if it means that she can stay comfort in the privilege that's afforded her in staying in working in cooperation in that structure. So when you see women celebrating the fact that someone's rights were suppressed and the rights impact them, it's a person who has internalized that structure and is not looking at how it harms the good of the whole. She doesn't care. She's only thinking about her position of privilege and power, and she's good with it. And she just does not see that she has responsibility for that. Holly, you can unmute and you can, hi there. Are you a deconstructing
Hello.
Christian?
Yes, I am.
Okay, did you have a question or a comment?
No, I can unpack a lot of things in these subjects. I'm, born and raised in the South, raised in the church. I was in handbell choir. I was in Bible drill. I was there every time the doors were opened, and it was pretty much, forced on me down there. And there was some very loving people in there. But as a child, I started having some questions when our choir director had an affair with a lady, and then I had to find out about that and why did he leave this church, and the daughter that was a friend of mine. And when I started going to church with other friends, and they were Church of Christ, or they were Second Baptist, or Missionary Baptist, I'm like, well, what do y'all believe? And why is that different from me? Because we're First Baptist, and what's a Second Baptist? And you're Missionary Baptist, and why is Church of Christ? And well, you're Pentecostal. My neighbor was Pentecostal. So what was your rules? And, and I started questioning then what in the world is, all these different things. And I'm also a former teacher. And I can tell you by in the classroom, dealing with children, talking about the 10 Commandments in there, it is hard enough to teach children, to be there for them lovingly, and all the nuances that are happening in their individual lives. You have children who come who haven't eaten. I had children who were abused, and I would report them, and then they'd come back to me and say, no, nothing was found. I had children whose shoes were hidden, so they couldn't go, so they could stay home and babysit. Much less, and also different religions, cutting of the hair, what they could wear, all these different things. And to throw that up there and go, okay, this is the Holy Grail, and they have their own thing going on in their homes, is very confusing to them, to discredit their own individual homes, their own individual experiences, and go, well, is my parents, my family wrong? So anyway, I have my teacher side, and I also have my religion side. But I felt like the church started leaving me in the South. I married a black man. And so then I started getting treated differently. Even though I sang, Jesus loves all the children of the world, red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in his sight. All of a sudden, there were some different rules.
Yep.
And I was bringing my children, trying to bring them to the church, and they were being treated differently. And I ended up getting divorced, and I married my husband now, who has, I've never been really exposed to gay people that are gay. My husband has 2 gay brothers. And so I had to start thinking of things differently, Then I started hearing how they were wrong and they were bad. And I'm like, but God loves them and God loves everybody, right? So I just had a lot of things come to me through life that showed us taking me different directions of way of to look at things. And I started questioning the church. Have I left God? No, I haven't. But I see God in a different way than way the church sees it. And how will people know if the church turns away? How will people ever experience God's love if you don't let them in? Or you're pointing fingers as they're coming in. They don't experience love. They experience rejection. They experience hate and judgment. And that's their first experience of church. So why would they want to go to church? Why would they want to know God if that is their first experience that you're giving them?
Well, Holly, thank you so much for sharing your story because, well, first of all, I love what you said. The church started leaving me, and you didn't change, but your expression of your faith that expanded to your lived experience. So with the love of your husband, and then his family, and how that you didn't see that as being in conflict, but the church did. And I think this is a really a perfect example of how we start to deconstruct before we ever really actively deconstruct. We start to become aware of how we don't align with some of these these beliefs that weren't quite ever said out loud, right? I mean, no one ever, well, in some churches, they flat out do. If you're an independent fundamentalist Baptist, you know what I'm talking about. And there's a lot of content here on, there's a lot of content. Thank you, Lynette. I see when you do that. And so Lynette is a mod, and she is muting you when I'm talking in case there's background noises, so that so that the people can hear okay. So if you get muted, that's why. When you're up here on the panel. But I think that's it's a great way to explain what happens when we start to think that we're just being who we are. Our church should celebrate that. Instead, you become very real. You become very aware of the subtleties that you are being rejected, and how that's changing you. And you may never have heard a sermon on it, I think that's why many of us are surprised when we come. I think that more often than not, people's lived experiences is a primary reason for deconstructing. Whether it's experiences like yours, Holly, or simply me, where you just say, I can't handle this hypocrisy anymore. I cannot live in this. You become aware of the subtle shifts, and you can't reconcile them with yourself anymore. Holly, did you have something else you wanted to say?
Not anything in particular, but I enjoyed the conversation.
Well, good. I appreciate it. Simply me and Holly, I've got several people waiting to come in. So I'm going to go ahead and drop you down. Please come back and see me sometime, okay?
Thank you so much. I enjoyed our conversation. And plus, I'm off to the dentist here in a little bit for my cleaning. Happy Pride Month to everybody, and hope everybody just stays healthy and happy. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, and please come back and see us.
Absolutely.
That was wonderful.
Have a great weekend.
Stacy, did you request by mistake? Let's see. We're going to go here. Hi, Brian. It's good to see you. Hi, Boomer. I'm guessing you're a Unitarian Universalist. Am I right?
Hi. Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you. It's probably best just to
Great.
leave your camera off. We're having a little bit of connection issues.
Right.
But so tell me a little bit about yourself. Are you an active Unitarian?
I am very active. My story is I spent more than 30 years in conservative evangelical churches as a pastor, slowly devolved away from not only being a minister, but Christianity and theism. After I retired from my last church because I wasn't being fair to them, no longer believing what they would expect me to believe. And the only thing I had left to preach about was love. And that wasn't enough for them. And so I retired. My wife and I went through our journey simultaneously in the same direction, which was a happy thing for us. And we went 2 years without attending any kind of church. I was done with church and God stuff, didn't want any of that. But I really missed community. Lucky for me, I found a community of Unitarians nearby. And that was about 8 years ago. We've been very active ever since. Primarily, I like it because you're free to work out your own spirituality and spiritual journey. And about 50% of us are non-theists. And the other 50% are a mix of Christians and Jews and theistic pagans, etc. So it's just a delightful community. And even though I don't believe, in Christian theology anymore, we all walk together with a great deal of sense of mission and purpose in making what we do have, the here and now, a better place for all humans.
One of my dearest friends is a ordained minister of a Unitarian church. She just recently retired. And Gator, do you have a question? I think that you're finishing a statement there. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. Someone mentioned that they might be checking out the UU. Some people, it's for you. I think that when you're looking at what it means to be a non-theist or theist, Boomer, do you want to talk about theism? And also, do you want to talk about a little bit more about what it means to be a Unitarian?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Non-theist basically does not believe. There are shades. It's kind of a continuum between extreme theism and extreme atheism. I'm not an extreme atheist in the sense of I'm not belligerent about it, and I don't judge other people who are still at a place in their life that they believe or need to believe in a higher power. But I would call myself a probably an agnostic atheist. I don't see proof for the existence of God, but I don't know everything. So that's how I would define myself. Unitarian Universalists do have their history in Christianity and have long been kind of outliers in the realm, in the world of Christian denominations that have slowly gone through it.
Boomer, I'm sorry, just a
Sure.
second. Can someone grab Bam's question? I'll put that in the queue, and we'll make sure we get that before we close the live. So go ahead, Boomer.
Sure. So the Unitarian Universalists used to be specifically a Christian denomination, but even then were kind of on the outside because they Unitarians did not believe in the Trinity, and a different group, Universalists, believed that everyone would be saved. Over time, that worldview led to a greater and greater openness, especially across racial barriers and accepting LGBTQIA community, and certainly openness to women and people that are not cisgendered being very active and taking leadership roles in our congregations and in our organization. I was one of the most delightful experiences I had after visiting, when we were still visiting the Unitarian Church, about the third or fourth Sunday we were there. I walked out and I told my wife, I said, this is the first time I've ever been in a service that all the people were women. All the directors, all the leaders were women, and I was so delighted. And it's just meant so much to me. Our services are still kind of have in a weird way a Protestant, kind of outline, songs, readings, meditation time, a sermon. We're starting to get a little bit away from that more and more as we try to incorporate other cultural influences and other religious gems and humanistic gems that we discover out there. Anything else?
No, I think that's good, Boomer. Thank you so much for coming up. I do have a couple of people in the queue. Come back and see us sometime.
Sure thing. Take care.
Okay, take care. Mama She, is that how you say your name?
It's Shy.
Shy.
I don't know why it requested me.
Oh, okay. So if it sometimes it just happens if you're tapping like, sometimes you might hit request. So if it's not a big deal if you don't need to be here, I can take you back down.
Thanks.
You're welcome. It happens all the time. Don't worry about that if it happens. It's not a big deal. And I have it says in my Yankee, I think. Oh, the dog. In Yankee. There we go. Hi.
Oh yeah, there's way more than one. There are 3 dogs, so one starts and all 3 will go. So I've left the room where they are.
Okay, that's good. Are you a deconstructing Christian?
I don't know if I would actually define myself. To be honest, I feel like I actually was just about to leave the chat only because I had some errands to run. But that said, I wanted to make sure I told you guys, I'm very grateful for everybody that is sharing their stories, that's making sure that other people understand how they feel about things, or that there are so many different opinions and so many different beliefs. And if I may just share mine really quick, I feel like I'm a gay woman, and I feel like growing up in the Catholic Church, that severely injured my mental capacity to love myself, and my emotional ability to love myself, because something was wrong with me, or I was broken, or I was this, or I was that. But it was always like a shameful thing to be gay. And so I tried to be straight. And I tried to please everybody. I ended up getting raped, and then ended up pregnant from the rape, and I ended up having a miscarriage. But I'll be honest with you, all of these things that happened are all of the things that have happened. Sorry, bad English there. Are things that I feel helped to shape how and what I believe God is. And I wrestled with this for years and years and years, and finally came to the conclusion, because I kept thinking, why would God create me with the intention of sending me to hell? Because it's not like I just made up these feelings. I would never do that. I come from a Catholic family. I want to fit in. I want to belong. But in all honesty, I came to the conclusion that God would not create me to send me to hell. And that sometimes religion makes up rules that aren't there. So, in that regard, that's how I feel. And I sincerely apologize if that, is off-putting to anyone, but to me personally, I don't care. This is what the conclusion I had to come to, in order to love God.
I appreciate that. And thank you for sharing your story. And because this is a safe space this is a safe space to do that. And it's not uncommon to come to a place, and this is a deconstructing space. So people are going to share not only their lived experiences, but how that's impacted their belief. Thank you so much for the heart hands. It's not only going to impact to your lived experience, but it's going to shape your faith or redefine it, because the things that you were taught, you can't reconcile them
Right.
with who you are and how the things that have happened to you. Because inside, now I'm not Catholic. Thank you for the confetti. I'm not Catholic, so but I can compare it to a fundamentalist belief. So it's very
Sure.
rigid and it's static. And
Oh, yes.
there's a solution for everything that's happened in your life, and it's going to be filtered through that narrative of a very rigid dogma. And that's what a lot of us experience, especially in evangelical church, Southern Baptist, the Assemblies of God, Pentecostal, those kinds of experience. We had that same kind of thing. And when that can no longer, when it starts to feel weaponized, when it starts to feel like you start to realize that you aren't the problem. There's some like something that reaches up to say, I'm going to rescue myself from this, because I'm drowning.
Yep.
And not all of this can be about an angry, vengeful, masculinized God,
Right.
that seems to be angry with me because I just can't get it right. And
Right.
here's what's really, really hard to reconcile, but this is very common, both inside the Catholic and inside this evangelical structure. The system protects the abuser.
Yes, it does.
And the victim loses their voice. And that is a critical point. Some people suffer through it. Some people decide life isn't worth living because of it. Or
that was me.
You say,
that was me. I won't deny that for sure. That was definitely me.
And but then something reaches inside you and says, I'm not dealing with this anymore. I'm not the problem. The system is the problem, and I'm going to escape it, and I'm going to heal from it. So thank you so much for sharing your story, and don't ever apologize for telling it.
I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings or anything. I mean, that's not my intention. My intention is to say, here is what I believe. I believe that, and might be a terrible thing. Again, might be a terrible thing to say, but I believe that religion, quote unquote, is created to put people in a box, to create the rigid rules that say you are this or you don't belong. You can't come here. You should be ashamed. We're going to all look down on you. But then you have the freedom to love God on the other side, where the rules don't apply. And I personally think that God would much rather have us love him without constraints than to be put into a box and say, if you don't fit, you don't belong, and we're not even going to miss you if you're gone. So that's all. I mean, I don't mean to take up so much time, but
No, you're
man,
good. Thank
I
you.
totally feel everything that people are saying here, and I respect you so much for doing this. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm so glad I stumbled upon this,
I'm
and
I'm
I
glad you
will be
did
back.
too. Yeah, come back and see us. We try to do this a couple times a week, and we are going to add some evenings for a while. So thank you so much. I'm going to go
Thank
ahead and
you.
drop you down. Take care of your doggies. Oh, let me see. Who is this beautiful soul? Are you there, dear child? Hi. Hey, let me ask you a
Hi.
question. Are you driving?
Uh-huh.
Because I'll get
No, I'm
flagged.
actually pulled over.
Okay, can
No,
you turn
I'm
off?
pulled over. I'm
Okay, can
totally
you
not
turn off?
moving.
Will you turn off your camera, please? I'm sorry you have to do
Turn
that,
off.
but I know
Okay.
I've seen somebody get problems with that. So everybody, can we get a couple of for educational purposes only and all that good stuff in there? I've been spending a lot of time in other people's lives and I see where the problem lies. So that's going to help me a little bit. But hi, beautiful soul. How are you?
I am actually doing a lot better. And I mainly wanted to come on here just to really thank you for a lot of things. You have actually helped me in more ways than you know. When my mom died in 2020, I guess I was kind of sort of subconsciously looking for another mother figure. And the first video I saw was yours of when you say, hey, wait, there's some things you forgot. And I thought that was just sweet. And the more I used TikTok, the more you would pop up and actually provide information that was useful or spoke to things that I was going through in my life. The deconstructing religion and letting me know it's okay to be spiritual but not religious, because that's one thing that I was actually struggling with is, I do believe there is a higher power than us, but I just did not like the hypocrisy in every single church that I went to. So that it means a lot. It really means a lot to me. But even beyond that, when I was going through things and you sent me messages of encouragement, I firmly believe that God places people in our paths that should be there for a reason. And you have actually been a big part of my grief with my mom, the things that I've been going through, things that I didn't understand. You just would pop up and your video would speak directly into my soul. And I'm actually very nervous. I don't know if you can hear my voice shaking, but you
You're doing great.
quite literally mean a lot to me. You quite literally mean a lot to me, and I appreciate you more than you could ever know.
Well, Rob,
Whew.
you're gonna make me cry too, because I think 2020, there was like a handful of us that kind of became like a family right there together early on,
Yeah.
because I found you before I went viral. And so it was, like North Omaha Cat Lady, Goddess Mia, you, Mama Tot. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I was one of her first
Yes.
friends when she had like 100 followers. um, and it's like that. It was like the groundswell. Like we just needed each other. And I remember the first time
Yeah.
you duetted one of my videos. My daughter and I was dancing, and we were making salad. I don't remember what it was, but it was so beautiful and pure. And I just thought you are the kindest soul. So Lorna, exactly, we need each other, so you came along at a time too, and I'm just honored. We kind of spiral. That's the way the FYP does for us. We kind of spiral, but let's
Yeah.
let's just stay committed to staying in touch with each other. And thank you so much for these words. And you did beautifully. Could not hear that you were
I
nervous at all.
absolutely promise.
All
I
right.
absolutely promise. There is no way that I'm going to let you go.
I love you, sweet soul. I will talk to you soon.
I
You you
love you
have
too.
you have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye. Okay, this is our last one that we're going to have time for. Then I'm going to try to make some time for some final two questions, and it looks like they disappeared. So that's okay. So if you'd like, I'm planning to be back Monday noon or 1. I'm sorry, I don't know for sure. Thank you, Caffeinated Farmer Gold. That is the best username. Got two questions I'm going to touch real quickly on. Can we talk about the psychological effects of youth after calls and youth anointing? The whole call? Are you talking about the altar call? I think that's what this question is about. Hi, Spencer. It's good to see you. So yeah, the altar call, especially when you look at youth camps, and the whole structure is to have them sleep deprived, emotionally drained, unsupported in that emotion, really raw, and then at the very end, exhaust them with a plea that becomes almost a demand that they give their life to Christ and sign things like the purity pledge, and they're going to be engaged to Jesus until they get married, or they're going to start writing letters to their husband. I don't know if Stephanie's here, but she could certainly talk a lot about this as well. Thank you, Mary Beth. Did I miss something? Did something come up on the screen? Anyway, so yeah, there is a lot of psychological harm that's done with that. That's why it's very important to call spiritual manipulative tactics what they are. They're a form of abuse. So anytime you're using, you're spiritually, you're manipulating, you're emotionally manipulating, and oftentimes using physical means, like in these especially in these church camp experiences with lack of sleep, bringing them together, not necessarily supervising them as close as they should. So sometimes there's actually even some bullying going on. And they're also dealing with their own hormones that are burgeoning. And then all of a sudden you're going to put all these pledges on top of them. So the emotional exhaustion that comes from that kind of experience and how that follows you on through into adulthood, it's very real. I think, praise the Most High. I think you got lost, honey. You need to turn left down the hall for Bible study. Talk about why churches don't pay taxes. Okay, so there is 501c3s is a tax denomination or a designation that you can file with the IRS. So nonprofits who do some kind of work that is to help a cause. So for instance, I founded an animal welfare cause that opened a spay-neuter clinic. We also don't pay taxes for that. However, the biggest difference between the type of 501c3 that a church is or some kind of ministry versus a nonprofit is that nonprofits like my spay-neuter clinic are required to submit a 990 each year. And on that 990, you are required to show your expenses, you're required to show your donations, your income, all of that. And then that can also be available for public view through organizations like GuideStar, Charity Navigator. Those are all online. Some of them you can get free, but to get down into the dirty parts of the expense reports where you can start to analyze how a nonprofit is using donations, you have to pay for that. But as a nonprofit, you want to get a higher rating from these places that analyze your expenses to say, yes, this organization is doing really well in using their donations for their intended mission. Because when you file for a 501c3, you have to say, here's what I'm going to do. Like I said, we're going to work to end pet overpopulation, and here's how we're going to do it. And so then your expenses get viewed through that mission statement and how you're using the donations and the income that comes in from the operations of that clinic. So you can go in and you can see the whole thing. A church, somewhere, I don't know when, it'd be a good thing to know, we decided that a church does not need to show what they do with their income. They do not need to show their expenses. They do not need to show how much the pastors get paid. They do not need to show their bonus. They don't not need to show any of that. They don't need to show that they said that they're going to send money to a missionary, whether they actually sent that money to the missionary. None of it. Now, that doesn't mean that some denominations don't reveal their expenses. For instance, inside of the more progressive churches, they will have elders, and oftentimes the congregation votes on the budget. So like, for instance, the Presbyterian Church, the PCUSA, because there's different kinds of Presbyterians, they have a congregational budget, which will vote on the pastor's salary, which will vote on all the expenses. And if it doesn't get approved, that budget has to be redone. So it very much is open for the congregation. But then you have across the street at an evangelical church or another church who doesn't want to show that, those congregational members may not ever know a dime of what is coming in. Now, if you remember in some of the old time churches, you would look up front by the pulpit, and there might be on the wall last week's attendance, or 2 weeks ago attendance, last week attendance, last week's giving, the next week's giving. They'll talk about the giving as if, because they want to remind you that you are personally responsible to keep the level of the giving of that church going. And sometimes that's tied to prosperity gospel, to say the more you give, the more you're going to receive back in blessings, which leads to a lot of financial abuse. And again, a manipulative tactic that leads to abuse. That's why it's so important to know this and understand how these manipulative tactics have harmed you. So for instance, if you go to, and it's been a while since I've done this, but if you go to charitynavigator.org and you type in Kenneth Copeland Ministries. Now, we know that Kenneth Copeland is one of the richest ministers in the United States. And at one time, he was projected to be worth $300 million. $300 million, a televangelist. And if you remember a couple of years ago when he said God told him to buy a jet because he wasn't supposed to be with all the demons that are on public planes, and he raised a bunch of money for that jet. He actually has an airstrip right outside of his home. And he got some flack for that, but at the end, he got the plane. So, but you just type in Kenneth Copeland Ministries and you might see several, but you're not going to see any information. It's locked down. Now, interesting, Joyce Meyer Ministry used to have everything online. She was one who defied that and said, look, I'm going to show you what we take in and what our expenses are. She doesn't do it anymore. I stopped following her years ago, but I just think that's interesting because she used to boast that from the stage, that said, look, I'll show you everything I'm doing. But she doesn't do that anymore. So she's not required to file that, and she ain't going to do it. So that's when people are talking about that. Now, as a collective, 501c3s are not supposed to talk politics. If you are going to be a political active advocacy organization, then you want to become a 501c4. And as a 501c4, the tax law is different about that. You can't get the same kind of tax deductions that you can when you give to a 501c3. But a 501c4 allows you to receive donations and advocate for not only specific causes, but for specific candidates. That does not mean that 501c3s cannot talk about social justice issues. For instance, several years ago, the Catholic Church gave millions of dollars to go up against the funding of Planned Parenthood. That's a social justice issue that the Catholic Church took a stand on and sent money towards that funding of that. That is, as much as I don't agree with it, it is something that they can legally do. What they can't do is take that millions of dollars that they did to fight the funding of Planned Parenthood, they can't give that directly to Donald Trump. They can't say from the pulpit that you are supposed to vote for Donald Trump. Now, are there churches absolutely shredding that separation right now? Yes. All you have to do is go look at any of the videos from Greg Locke, who literally says you can't be a Democrat and be a Christian. He talks about Trump being the ordained one. He talks about the insurrectionists as being the warriors, the prayer warriors. He talks about all these different things. You have people like Robert Jeffries, who had Trump come up and then endorse him as the candidate. So now there have been churches who have lost their 501c3 designation, but it's really gray, and the IRS doesn't seem to be wanting to take an active role right now in pursuing the deactivation of 501c3s for churches. And I think it has to do because of the political climate. Because if you look at the ones who are talking, it's the ones that are talking to promote Trump. So what is that going to do? What happens if the Biden administration, the IRS under the Biden administration, goes after churches who are endorsing Trump? What's Fox News going to say? What is that? It's going to ignite this ignorant, uninformed base who continues to be spoon-fed this misinformation from Newsmax, Fox News, Steve Bannon, Alex Jones, all of these people who have flat out admitted that they're lying. Fox News said about Tucker Carlson when they had about the voting machines, why would anybody take our news seriously? Why would anybody take Tucker Carlson seriously? Sidney Powell admitted under oath that she was lying, and she knew it. That's how what was the name of that voting machine, Dominion voting machine, whatever it's called, got millions of dollars because they were harmed by these lies. But can you imagine what they would say and how they would spin it if the IRS pursued stripping churches of their 501c3 because they're endorsing a candidate in the middle of this tension with 5 months to go before the election? So I think that's why it's not happening. No one's going to do anything about it right now. Now, in the 70s, Bob Jones University, because universities are also 501c3s, many of them are 501c3s. So Bob Jones was a public university with a 501c3 designation. So if you read that political now going back to the beginning of this live 2 hours ago, Bob Jones University is in that article from Politico.com. Remember the real origins of the religious right? So that at the bottom, at the core of the religious right, this is all about segregation. That's how we started this live. Bob Jones was a 501c3 that lost its 501c3 designation because of racism. They were not going to admit Black students, and they were hell-bent on sticking to that policy. And the connection to evangelicalism is Jerry Falwell, who was working for Bob Jones University. So you start putting the foundation of all that together, you see from the 70s, getting Reagan elected, Mitch McConnell coming into office, you start to see how the pillars of this initiative began to take shape. It was all in response to civil rights. And this has always been about segregation. That Project 2025 is to protect the white Christian man. That's it. Every other right that has been fought for under the Project 2025 will be annihilated. Now, I hope that answers your question and why we have to continue to educate ourselves. I'm not giving up. What's that song? I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up. No, not me. I'm not going down easily. We're here to stay awake, use your voice, and vote. And this is, if you notice, I don't cheerleader Biden. I am talking about the difference between authoritarianism and the fact that Biden is not an authoritarian. He is not a tyrant. He honors the Constitution, but I am not a big Biden fan. All you have to do is look at what's happening with Palestine and the G side, and to know I'm not a fan, and understand. But this is literally our last opportunity to vote. And I think we will rise to the occasion. I do. I think there's enough now being said and many people being educated and alarmed that we will rise up. And we have to start looking at this from a local level and the state level. Pay attention to what your state is doing. Get involved in Defense of Democracy, either has local chapters or state chapters. Connect with Red, Wine, and Blue, who is having all kinds of training initiatives. I'm being interviewed for their podcast next week. I can't remember what I'm speaking about, but get informed, stay informed. But they can also connect you to chapters that's in states, because they're not in every state, but they're growing all the time. Watch I Am Politics Girls videos. She's here on TikTok, but she's also in other places as well. So make sure that you are paying attention to what's happening, and we will continue to stay awake and use our voice so that we will vote. Now, I'm going to end this by reminding you that this is Pride Month. If you're out loud and proud, we celebrate you, we affirm you, and we love you. We see you for who you are, and we are so happy to be here and learning to be what it means to be helpful allies and making this a safe space for you. If you are in the closet because it is not safe, you would somehow, your financial well-being or your home life would be jeopardized, then I just want you to know that we see you. Even in that darkness, your light shines through. Continue to work on your plan. Just because today you can't be out doesn't mean that someday in the future you will be. And we see you and we love you. And there'll be millions of us here waiting for you when you're able to come out. And as I said just a few minutes ago, do not give up. Do not put your head in the sand. This is our time. This is our legacy. What we do right now will impact our children, our children's children, and our children's children's children. And we will rise to the occasion, because we do. And we will never go asleep again, ever. Will we believe that this patriarchal structure will work for our well-being? We'll never believe that again. What will be left at the end is our restructuring our country so that the leadership reflects who we truly are. A rainbow of people who want to respect the authenticity of all of us and our beliefs. I believe that. That's my vision and that's my hope. So for this Friday, thank you all so very much. I will be back Monday, I think at 1 p.m. I don't know. I could surprise you. I could surprise you this weekend. Who knows? And yes, as Lynette says, please follow Rev Karla's backup. It's Rev Karla's shop and Rev Karla 0.200. I would like to get those to 1,000 followers in case anything ever happens here. My book, Deconstructing, Leaving Church, Finding Faith, is in pre-order. You can find it where you see my profile. Y'all help me out with the pre-orders if you absolutely can. It does help in that universe. We love you so much. How about some hearts for these mods? Oh my word. Did you work? I mean, I could see the comments and I wanted to go off on them, and they were just gone. You just took care of them. Show some hearts, show some love to these amazing mods, Stacy and Lynette. I know you have been going like crazy, and this is one of our longest. And we will be bringing in some We will be doing some mod trainings for those of you who are just my super fans, and I love you. If you are interested in other conversations and having conversations with each other where they support each other, I do have Rev Karla's Inner Circle. It's not on this platform. It's someplace else. You can find it where you see my picture here. It's free, but it allows us to have conversations off the noise of social media. Thank you all so very much. Make it a wonderful weekend. And I will talk to you soon. Show me by, because I know there's a delay, and I want, who is in the Harker. I'm not taking any right now. I've been on for over 2 hours, so I need to take a break. Go take care of some personal things. Tell me bye so I know that you see that I'm leaving. Bye for now.